Texas judge has sided with the school district in a very controversial case involving a decision to suspend a student over his dreadlocks. Daryl George.
The former First Lady, Michelle Obama, revealing that she considered wearing her natural hair and braids during her time at the White House, but decided that Americans weren't ready for her natural black hair. Listen to the former First Lady.
The time now is 6:34, fired for her natural hair. That's what one former news anchor says happened to her while working in Jackson, Mississippi. Now, her story has gone viral. Liza Lucas, you're at the bridge, and you're following this conversation. What are people saying about this one?
Says Gary's police chief gave him an ultimatum days after he was sworn in. Cut your braids in 24 hours or be terminated. He says he thought the department would allow him to keep his hair because of his religion, but he was fired the next day.
The idea of professionalism is just your willingness to kind of assimilate into your workplace culture and act in a way that pushes the mission forward. So whatever that may be, like workplace culture at a museum looks very different than workplace culture at like a warehouse. Neither is better or worse, but just different attitudes and ideas are necessary to make that thing work. So you gotta switch it up.
Maintaining a level of maturity in your interactions with your superior or your peers, and fulfilling the assignment or the role that is attached to your job description in a very mature manner.
So professionalism to me looks a little bit different depending on where you are and depending on kind of what the community is that you're serving.
When I first started out, as a professional, I graduated and, I went to prep school. It was prep school in DC, then I went to an Ivy League school. So, what had been put in me as far as professional was being clean cut, shaven or no beard, low haircut. And so I kind of carried that with me even after I graduated and started working at a law firm.
Behaving, first having a mentality to be mature in the workplace.
Well, in many ways it's been co-opted to put forward, I think, norms that don't align to all people and body types and even phenotypes for that matter.
Over the summertime, I would let my beard grow, I would let my hair grow, but when I went for job interviews, I would shave and clean up to look professional.
From what I was not born, but from what I was raised, and especially starting out in my career, what I understood is that professionalism is to a specific standard by a specific community of people. And so the more that I've started to kind of deep dive and learn a little bit more about how the concept of professionalism, as I come to know it, is not very inclusive at all, and is actually telling lots of groups of people how to behave based on what is acceptable to, let's say, predominant, culture in American society.
Certain epistemologies that are, I guess, anti-professionalism, meaning depending on people's weight or literacy or dialect, meaning they have an accent, or even how certain clothes fit the body could be seen as professional, unprofessional, or something's too tight or too short or too big or too small. There's always some kind of critic or maybe even your inner self that would tell you what's appropriate for the workplace.
A lot of my lawyers probably have more straight hair. I would say I have a few physicians that are curly. Folk in the fashion industry are probably in between, probably go curly or straight.
If you've ever felt discriminated against because of how you wear your hair to work, you are not alone. But Montgomery County is trying to do something about it, and it's become the first local jurisdiction to introduce what's called the Crown Act. Makia Turner joining us now to explain what exactly this means, Makia, for people who want to wear natural hairstyles to work. Good morning.
Good morning, Annie, and good morning to all of you out there. The Crown Act, also known as the Natural Hair Bill in Montgomery County, would prohibit natural hair discrimination. That means it would protect people who want to rock hairstyles like afros, dreadlocks, and braids. The move would amend county laws about discrimination that are already on the books.
Unfortunately, the people that needed an act like that to be passed are still discriminating against people with because of their hair. It's just not as blatant.
I think it technically should have, but I have heard, like I mentioned earlier, stories of somebody, if they have, this is just an example, like long dreads and maybe they didn't put it in a ponytail or something, like, oh, can you make sure you look professional or tidy? You know, I wasn't there, so I can't say that it's true right now, but I believe it should have. But maybe people always have like that little bit in the back of their mind where it's not, how do I say it, like where they still probably believe that professionalism looks like this, and if you look like this, then it's probably not professional.
I don't think any laws limit discrimination. All the cultural changes, you can outlaw anything. It doesn't matter if no one actually listens to the law and if culture doesn't reflect the law.
It's just not something that it's more subtle now, and it's one of those things like you can't quite pinpoint. Like you never really know if you didn't get the thing because of your hair. It's always like in the back of your mind, but you can't really say for sure.
What I do think it did, it allowed for a conversation to take place. And in my organization, I do oversee HR functions. And that is something that we get to cite when any kind of combative nature or contradictions may arise. But by no means is anything written on a piece of paper do anything unless the people around it agree and buy into that process.
I wouldn't say I've experienced hair discrimination, but I definitely have experienced microaggressions when it comes to comments about what hairstyles look better on me.
I was an event planner, and I remember constantly straightening my hair, constantly being in a space where if my hair was curly, I was pulling it back into a tight bun as if not to offend people. And one day, it's like 22 or something like that, something snapped in me, and we were throwing our biggest event of the year, and I was like, I'm going to box braid my hair. And within 2 weeks, I was fired.
I have worn my hair natural and also, you know, with perm. So, but I've never experienced that. I know some individuals have and hear it through the news and so forth that individuals have, but thankfully I have.
Now, again, being a chief business officer, I'm able to really dictate the culture of the organization. And I wear my hair out big and bold more than not. And I have had people that I've hired say, it was such a relief to see you as a leader in your organization wearing your hair out and curly. And it really promotes an environment of inclusivity.
I have found that because I've been prone to blow drying and straightening my hair, and not that it's necessarily been a pressure for me, I think just in my culture and specifically in Latina culture, we're just used to kind of blow drying our hair often. So because I've done that for many, many years, my own natural curl pattern is, you know, kind of like a little bit funky.
And so I think, unfortunately, many young people are not victim, but they fall into that, meaning they look for external validation, peer pressure. They want to be accepted or cool or considered pretty by some people, and they may not like what their natural hair looks like, and so they're going to do everything from extensions to dyes to relaxers. So I think bias in terms of personal bias, texturism is harmful because unfortunately, many of the chemicals that we put in our hair, that women put in their hair in particular, has been found to cause cancer. And so we're literally killing ourselves to be deemed beautiful when we are beautiful just because we are. And so I think internalized texturism is quite detrimental to Black girls in particular, to all girls. But I think because anti-Blackness is so palpable and global, I think that Black girls are far more encouraged to hate themselves and to like other features or attributes that are not part of their biology.
What I remember most, and I remember this in phases, is there were only white kids on the shows. And again, growing up as a Muslim, a Puerto Rican Muslim in a tiny town of 20,000 people, I was already an anomaly, and I was used to kind of being pigeonholed and identified in whatever way other people decided. So from a media perspective, we did a lot of magazines when I was a kid, and there was like Teen Beat and all these kind of magazines, and we would buy them. And there were nothing but people who looked nothing like me at all. So if I reflect back on when my first opportunity arose for me to no longer wear a headpiece, it actually makes sense as a result of this question that of course my hair was straight. Of course the first thing I would do was straighten it and not go curly, because who represented me in that space?
I do feel that so much of how we perceive hair is cultural. It's based on what is culturally acceptable at the moment. It's based on what you see on TV. It's based on what you see in music and movies. It's what you see, and also what you can manage.
I grew up in the Caribbean, and so as a child, you know, we embraced having natural hair, and my hair used to be braided. I didn't get perms until I was 12. So I think for me, not being bombarded with like magazines and so forth, allowed me to embrace my natural hair. So outside forces didn't really influence in that aspect.
Society, I think in a certain way, dictates. It's not necessarily for me at my age, like, you know, what Tiana Taylor is doing with her hair or anything like that. It's more of like, what do I want to represent by my physical appearance before I even say a word? And I think hair is one of the primary ways to do that.
So a lot of my inspiration, like I said, came from music and movies. It came from older people that I saw growing up. So, you know, whether it's neighbors or just like really fly women in my neighborhood that I admired, that's where I saw a lot of my inspiration. We used to have these hair magazines. I forget the names, but there would be these hair magazines that you would go and you would see all the hairstyles and what is of the moment.
I remember transitioning into my college years, and there was more of a variety and diversity on screen. You know, you had shows like Girlfriends and so on and so forth that show the array of color and hairstyles and what quote-unquote professionalism was in a real way. And I actually would wear my hair in braids all the time, my latter years of college, and, you know, wear it out big and curly. So I think a lot of my influence came from the media in whatever way it was transmitted to me.
Sitting in the kitchen for what seemed like all day while my mother did my hair. Today it's a lot easier, thanks to PCJ Original Formula Relaxer with Nutrisheen. I feel good about using PCJ. It's mild enough for my daughter's hair and for my color-treated hair. I just love the way PCJ makes our hair soft and silky and so easy to comb. I remember the good old days, but I really like the good new days with PCJ Original Formula Relaxer.
Black media during the 1990s and 2000s showed more popularity for straight and looser curled hairstyles. During this time, chemical relaxers took off.
We saw things in people who we aspired to be like, and many of them were not who we are. So different socioeconomic backgrounds, different geographically. So just because we aspired to what we thought I would assume to be improving our lives, we straightened our hair and assumed that with those things would become, you know, professionalism, better jobs, more access to places that had previously denied Black people, especially Afrocentric Black people. And so a need or want to assimilate into those avenues and spaces came with straight hair and professionalism, if you will.
I want to say that I hope that we as people, and certainly as young people, are doing all that we can to erase that concept that straight hair is necessary for professional success. Having straight hair has nothing to do with your intelligence, has nothing to do with your capability, has nothing to do with your drive, your motivation, your passion for your work. So I think, you know, we definitely have a lot of work to do to destigmatize that, because how you're presenting yourself or upon first glance or how you're wearing your hair is not at all a measurement of your skill set.
I do not think that conforming to straight hair is a requirement for success. I think is what you know intellectually. I think it's the gifts and talents that you have. I think that the physical is simply a shell, if you will.
In my opinion, no. I mean, it shouldn't be. That's coming from a curly hair person, of course. But when I do see people, when they go like for a job interview or something, and including myself, like I do when I go get professional, I do go get my hair straightened and stuff. But I believe it shouldn't be. I think curly hair is curly hair. It's beautiful.
I could say that I can certainly understand, and I think in my own upbringing, my hair tended to be straightened or blow dried for big events, for graduations, for, you know, other types of special events that typically it's felt like that was the standard for dressing up or for, you know, looking my best.
Particularly in my role as a professor in New York at City College, which is in the middle of Harlem, I think it provides other, I hope, knock on wood, it helps other Black girls see that they can be themselves and they don't need to straighten their hair or to put harmful chemicals into their bodies to be considered professional or beautiful or attractive or smart. That, you know, the degrees are on the wall and my hair is still in its natural state.
I think it affects people of color most. Of course, people of color are not the only people with textured hair, but people of color disproportionately are affected by it. I do think it's a racial issue, and it's one of the many layers of racism that is out there.
You know, like I said, from a guy's perspective, I know it's a little bit different than with women, but you know, it does impact us too in certain ways. Like I was mentioning with the Army and the new rules about facial hair, and you know, that could be interpreted as a way of, for whatever reason, targeting Black men, because for a lot of us, when we shave, there's ingrown hairs, there's razor bumps, there's valid medical reasons, because those can be painful. So, you know, things like that is interesting to watch and also keep in mind, and just know and respect that it impacts women a lot more than men, but that we are also impacted to a degree.
A lot of education in that realm will probably rewrite the narrative over time. It's not going to be a quick fix, but I believe over time that will help impact. And I think also on a personal level, parents and groups encouraging children to embrace who they are.
I do think from a personal level, for people to get comfortable with their hair, they need to be confident, and they need to also learn how to do their hair. Like, I think when you know how to do something, when you have knowledge and you have confidence, it's easier to do things regardless of what it is. So I think on a personal level, we as women need to work on that.
There should be more people of color in leadership positions, because that sets the tone, and that, for me, in order to walk the walk, you have to talk the talk. So I think by having more women of color, certainly, and more or people of color in leadership positions, it allows people at the high level to be a part of making the change and rewriting the policy within their own respective businesses and organizations, because they are an advocate for those who are their direct reports or work within the company or organization. And I think if enough people start making these changes, then it creates enough kind of buzz, I suppose, that it could work towards abolishing things. But I think the most immediate thing would be putting people in places of power that can help rewrite these policies, even if it's at a small level within a small organization.
And I think it's more education about embracing your natural look, right? And it's, as I said, it's just a matter of heart issue, perspective, and just embracing who people really are. You're born natural. Embrace and highlight those.
There are a lot of things, a lot of factors that got us to the point where people are being discriminated based on their hair texture. So it's not going to be just one thing that undoes it.
If you have kids or someone, just always massaging and telling them that their hair is beautiful, curly, and compliment them on it. So that kind of like stops that generation to have to go through all the other things that people in my generation have to go through.
And not pushing a narrative about what group is acceptable, right? We see just a movement about accepting your natural hair. Even through the pandemic, different festivals that are popping up about, like, I believe the Curly Fest, about embracing natural hair.
There's so much that's happening culturally that allows people to discriminate for whatever reason. Rolling back DEI, I think, doesn't help either, So I think it's a lot of little different things that the U.S. needs to do to get us to